right, Zels, it's been a few days. I've watched this game about 5 times. It plays over and over in the office. The Springboks 29, France 28, French Polony 29-28 a kilogram in South Africa. Wonderful, wonderful promotion of that. France, it's going to haunt them forever. They had the chance to win a World Cup quarterfinal against the defending champions. It's the game they wanted. In hindsight, it's the game they wish they'd never asked for. The world loves South Africa. The rugby media is absolutely loving South Africa. Respect fighting for South Africa. And it was based on the fact that we had 5 scrums and 4 lineouts and basically were hopeless in 3 of the 4 lineouts. The Springboks won the biggest game in the last 4 years without needing a lineout or a scrum on the attack. And the world loves us. Explain that to me.
That is absolutely correct and glorious at the same time. For too long, we've been branded as this boring team that has got no dynamism and lacks innovation and lacks creativity. And I think there probably was a time when that was true. It was a long time ago. I mean, even if we go back to 2007, you'll know best. The Boks led in try scoring, great point scoring team, scored some great tries. The idea that the Boks are this stale, boring team based on what they did against Wales at the last World Cup is it's just silly. It's a silly stereotype. And like you say, the Boks took the opportunity in this massive crunch quarterfinal against the hosts in a playoff game where it's do or die, go home if you lose. They were robbed of set piece. They were robbed of the pillars that everybody says we lean on so heavily. And what did they do? Curtly Arendse, Cheslin Colby, some of the most electric tries you'll see, long-range tries, and just phenomenal defense, grit, courage. We had to force a scrum, basically, to get our tight 5 against theirs, and completely disproved the notion that South Africa leans so heavily on their set piece they can't win without it.
The most significant example of that was incredible defense from Eben Etzebeth on DuPont. Hurried him, the pass went forward, scrambled, we scooped it up, 2 passes, Jesse Krill on the foot, Cheslin Colby, bye-bye Penno, try. I keep on saying it's the kind of stuff we've always applauded the All Blacks for. Said we've had them under the cosh in those big games for 6-7 minutes. Boom, 1 mistake. Incredible skill. Try in the corner, and people have raved about their skill set.
Yeah.
We know we've got skill set. Cheslin Colby is one of the most skilled players in the world. He didn't become that on Sunday evening. He's been that for a while.
Yeah.
Curtly Arendse the same. Damian Willemse' skill set right up there with the best in the world. Damien Dialandi as a 12. It's been the most consistent 12 in the world. And then you look at Manie Lebok's natural skill set. We saw that, and obviously Andre Pollard's appreciation for how to play 10 in big playoff games. So what we saw from the Boks was nothing new. But incredibly, it's the English media. When I talk about that, it's those up in the United Kingdom who are now raving about the Springbok side. The same media who were writing that we had killed rugby when we killed the England side 32-12 in the 2019 final. But I think this is a handover of the British and Irish Lions series in South Africa, where when you put it into context, South Africa had no option but to revert to a physical, low-risk kicking game to try and win that series. They had played no rugby for nearly 20 months. The only hit-out was against Georgia in a 49 win. They had COVID straight after that game. The second test was cancelled. They had to play most of the test squad in an SAA game against the Lions, who had been on tour for the best part of 4 weeks at that stage, and had come out of a Six Nations, and it had rugby in front of crowds.
Yep.
And we played 3 test matches in Cape Town, no crowds, no home ground advantage. We played it with a team that was so underdone in terms of match prep. They came back, titanically fought to win the second and third test. Rassie Erasmus obviously went ballistic after the first test. The world media, meaning the UK media, turned on him. And that test series win was soured by the off-the-field things. And no one understood or had an appreciation up north that anyone else would have done exactly the same thing with the artillery they had and the kind of cattle they had to win that series. If we had gone out and tried to play free-flowing footy against the British and Irish Lions with no preparation, we would have lost 35-25. They would have had a historic test series win, and we would have had to live with that for 12 years. Just like France has to live with their failure for the next 4 years at least, Ireland, how long they're going to live with this failure for not getting through to the semi-finals. Rassie and Jacques were not prepared to live with a failure that they couldn't correct ever again because they wouldn't be around in 12 years' time.
But also, there's two sides to every story. And the other side to this story is that the British Lions didn't play any rugby. Wales didn't play any rugby in that playoff match at the last World Cup. That's why the contest, was what it was. If every time the Boks put up and on Wales, they passed the ball down the line and attacked on the wing, the contest would have been very different. And when the Boks won the turnovers from those resultant wide breakdowns, it would have been a very different game. Both teams engaged in that boring rugby. The same was true during the Lions series. So that's the reason. It wasn't the Boks didn't force the game to be doer. That's the way it played out because both teams, the stakes were too high and they opted for low risk.
Interesting press conference with Rassie Erasmus earlier in the week. Interesting questions about Siya Kolisi. When he made Siya Kolisi's captain in 2018, we played England in a 3-test series at home, won the first 2 tests, and that was an England team that had come off the back of 18 successive wins. Was 24-3 up at Ellis Park, and we came back and won that match magnificently and then comfortably won it in Bloemfontein before making 11 changes and giving them a dead rubber in Cape Town. Everyone was that Siya Kolisi was only picked as a political statement. Rassie Erasmus says he was picked because he's the best player and I think he's the most inspirational leader along with a strong leadership group.
Yeah.
As Andre Pollard said, Siya has grown immeasurably as a human being, as a player, and also as a leader. They now follow him.
Yeah.
It's not like he's part of the leadership pack. We follow this guy. Charismatic in that. Let's take us back to the British and Irish Lions series. That first test, Nick Berry. The accusation was he treated Siya with no respect. He didn't. He dismissed him.
Totally.
Alan Wynne-Jones got all the respect in that first test. Siya, the match officials, didn't treat him well. Rassie Erasmus stepped in and said it's a disgrace. He's the captain of the Springboks. He's a World Cup winning captain. Show him some respect. So it's only been post the Lions series that we've seen match officials give Siya that due respect. We've seen Siya grow into that confident role of knowing when to talk, when to turn his back and speak to his players. But what was very interesting that Rassie said is that they went away as a leadership group and said, how do we make World Rugby like us? How do we make match officials like us? How do we make opposition fans like us? And how do we make the world media, especially up north, like us? Keep on being nice guys at press conferences. Let's be accessible. And let's also change the way we play and speak more to this kind of global game of let's play it wide, let's play with width and that. And strategically they did that. And they did it based on the opposition because they could always have done that. That 32-12 demolition of England, that was started up front with 6 monster scrums, converted points into penalties. And then when the game was basically there to be broken open, we used Amim and Pimpy and Cheslin Colby's individual genius to score our first ever World Cup winning final tries.
Yeah.
That team has always been able to play like that. They haven't evolved to a team that now can play like that. You look at their stats from 2018, 2023, very similar in terms of meters made, carries, and kind of advantage over the gain line. It's just that they're not doing it as much in this competition with the use and the reliance on the set piece. I think it's just a masterstroke from Rassie, the way he's worked the English media. And the fact that France got beaten, it wasn't England that got beaten like that, means they were all...
They were going to be on board.
All on board, all in applause.
Yeah.
And they are willing, South Africa, to play like that again in the semi-final against England. And I don't think South Africa will play like that. I think they will revert to a 6-2 split on the bench and a power game. And they saw the blueprint. The blueprint was... play them like we did in 2019, because if you beat England up front, you beat them.
Yeah.
They have nothing to offer after that.
Yeah.
When we tried to play some footy against them, a year later, or 2 years later, we lost by a point. And we lost by a point stupidly because we tried to play in the last minute of the game, and we were always going to concede a penalty. And then when we played a more balanced, structured game, in our last visit at Twickenham, some brilliant counter-attacking from Damian Willemse, Willie LaRue, and Kurt Lee for that try, we were always in control of that game and won it comfortably 27-13.
Yeah.
That, to me, is us showing we can play you with our outside backs, but we can't play you without our tight game. And I don't think England's got the capacity to play anywhere near as well as France did against us in terms of tactical or players.
Agree 100%. England can't beat you. England can hold their own and let you beat yourself. If you don't beat yourself, you'll beat England. So... the Boks don't need to take massive risks to beat England. The Boks can physically control them in the collisions and at the set piece. And wherever X Factor rears its head in that contest, the Boks are going to have the edge. I'm just trying to think of who the players are in that England team that have that sort of game-winning ability. You know, Tuilagi on his day is a great player. Owen Farrell's obviously a man for big moments. Ben Earls has come through nicely. And then for me, Courtney Laws is an underrated guy there. But outside of those guys, it's not a team brimming with world-class talent. And certainly doesn't have the swagger of the heavyweight sides in rugby. And like I say, they're just a team that can't really break it open. You know, they're going to play chess. They're going to move their pawns up the board and hope for you to take a risk. And when it doesn't pay off, almost trip and fall into a win. And I don't think the Boks are going to play that role.
But if you look at England in the context of the World Cup, unbeaten, you actually have to ask, who have they really beaten? They beat an Argentinian side that was so off their game, and they relied on 3 George Ford drop goals, which was wonderful application and reading of the match situation to kind of give them a buffer. But still, with all that dominance, with all the field position, they struggled to put Argentina away. Then they pumped some minnows, sneaked in against Samoa, and kind of threw away a 24-10 lead against Fiji, who had just lost to Portugal, came back and won it through a drop goal and a late penalty. And Fiji, with the greatest respect, didn't play the brightest of rugby in the last 5 minutes when they were pushing for a potential penalty, kick it to the corner, a drive and go through. So they've, in my mind, they've really played no one at the World Cup. We've had the 2 biggest games you can play. We played 1 and 2 in the world. We played Ireland and we played France. In Paris, basically that game in Paris against Ireland could have been at the Aviva with 30,000 more Irish people. And the one in France was just massive. It doesn't get bigger than that for the Springboks playing the host nation in the quarterfinal in Paris. I don't think England will have ever experienced this kind of intensity at this World Cup. And the Boks have kind of gone through 2 dress rehearsals. So I just see this softening, but in a kind of wind-up way through the English media, because we're up against them this weekend. All respect, keep on playing that way. We now love you. You've shown us that South Africans aren't big, strong, and dumb. They aren't boorish. They have personality. Rassie's become the loved guy again. He was the villain. He was the most hated man in world rugby. He had brought the game into disrepute. Not Nick Berry or kind of their media. Now he's on the charm offensive. He's working them. To me, the Boks just have to keep it simple.
Spot on.
Keep it focused and forget who they're playing in that sense and go out and do what they've always done in what they believe will make them successful. Because in a World Cup, in this semi-final and in this final, you need 1 more point to advance and 1 more point to win it. If we had lost 35-33 in the most thrilling game, even more thrilling than the one we won 29-28, there wouldn't have been euphoria in this country on a Monday. There would have been critique. How stupid were we to play expansively? World Cups come down to how you win it, not how you entertain.
Well, Test match rugby comes down to winning. I mean, that's sort of what I've grown up into. Is you want to win every match you play.
You do, but Test match rugby, be it Six Nations, Rugby Championship, end of the year tour, incoming tours, most times you get the next Saturday to kind of fix it. Here you don't.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Here you got to wait for 4 years to fix it.
Yeah.
And for those players who get back there in 4 years, it's a hell of a long 4 years.
Yeah.
So
your keep it simple comment, I think, is bang on, and it should be directed specifically at Rassie. You don't need to overthink it this week. You need to pick a team that's going to beat England. We don't need to see Lukhanyo playing lock because of some technical, wrinkle. Keep it simple. Just do the basics right. Everybody gets through without injuries, and let's concentrate on the next one.
You know, if you look at the way they've approached the game, they've played 2 World Cup finals to get to this position. And I enjoyed what Rassie was saying and what Sia was saying. Our focus is entirely on this game. It's going to be, and we're going to speak in a lot more detail on Friday once we know the team, the match 23 that's been put out from both sides. They only announced it on Thursday morning. But I don't believe we will ever be able to match that intensity that we showed a week later.
Against England, no.
Against England.
I don't think we need to.
No, I don't think we need to either. But we can't expect that intensity. We can't expect that performance that England put up against Fiji and ours against France to be the barometer of what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a messy game.
Especially because for England, as rank underdogs, the reality is as much as they want to win this game, this is their final. Like, there is no game after this for them. In their minds, they want to be in the final, but they've got to play this game like there is no tomorrow.
But also, they go out on Saturday. They've had a great World Cup semi-final.
Exactly.
Who said they would get there?
Exactly.
Look at the draw. They should have got there.
They're already the best team in Europe, right? Because they made it this far.
You know, they got there. Ireland are gone and France are gone. Scotland
on.
are gone. The teams that were spoken up ahead of them.
Yeah.
So statistically, they're already success, even though they haven't been.
Correct.
When you look at how they've evolved their team and kind of. I love about Clive Woodward is he picked all 4 Northern Hemisphere teams in the semi-finals. Then he went AWOL for a week. Now he's picked England again, and so Clive, I really like it when you call it big. You got to front it the next day, man, and he never does. But it's good entertainment for us back here in South Africa, and obviously in New Zealand as well. The 2 teams that he tends to go at. But going back to the Boks. I think Rassie has made his point.
Yeah.
I can win with 7-1, I can win with 6-2, and I can win with 5-3. Jacques has made his point. I don't have to win by denying them a try and us scoring 1.
Yes.
The Boks outscored France by 4 tries to 3. France boasted that they had the best defensive game in the world. Sean Edwards had turned them into the best defensive team, better than South Africa.
Yeah.
We scored 4 tries against them. We survived on scraps, 25% field position and territory up until early 70th minute. That balanced out slightly at the end.
Yeah.
But that was also showing how strong we were, that our defense became our offense. It was one of our biggest attacking weapons because when the moment came, we had 3 turnover try scoring opportunities, well, 2 turnover try scoring opportunities, we scored them. We had 1 structured one, we scored it with the bomb on their left winger, couldn't handle it. Deolandi went in, and then we had a structured play that was away from the norm. We were going to take the scrum. I thought they would. They weren't going to take the line out. The line out wasn't functioning. They took a quick tap, worked the forwards into it, and then Eben
crashed over.
He recognised he had a fly off and 2 other backs, and he just was not going to be stopped. So there was so much rugby intelligence applied.
Yeah.
But it's been amazing to me to read these commentators that have been around for years, who have been condemning the South Africans, for only being able to play one way and their physicality, is to see them finally concede we actually can play a bit of ball in this country. And we have always been able to play ball. I go back to Nick Mallett's team that retired most of the French team at the Parc de France. 50 plus points to 10. Magnificent game. Peter Rousseau getting 4 tries that day. Rassie Erasmus playing. Great visuals of him working the ball. We could play. The side that destroyed Australia under Coral du Plessis' last game, 61 points, could play. Jake White's team could play. Peter de Villiers' teams, 42 points to 6 at England. At Twickenham, could play. They've never lost more than that. This team can play.
Exactly.
This team has done it against the All Blacks. 41-12 against Australia at Loftus. They can play. We've always known we can play. We've had an inferiority complex. Then we needed the will to say it. And now they did. What do we do with that?
Mate, the way I look at it is no slight. When Oaks criticise us of being boring, it really has absolutely no impact on my feeling about the Springboks, because it's a bit like me climbing in the ring with Mike Tyson, and after I regain consciousness because he's knocked me out and he's wearing a belt, I say, but at least my hair's better than yours. Like, what does it mean? I've just jumped in the ring here, this Oaks knocked me out. When it comes to rugby, the Boks have been there or thereabouts the top team in the world for a very long time. We've got 3 World Cup titles to show for what we do. These guys in the UK, they talk about this beautiful game. What is the reward for it? What do you get from it, from being on the moral high ground of rugby?
Well, I'm going to 2 things. Firstly, your boxing analogy is wonderful, but it's like saying, I've got the nicest hairstyle. If Tyson was that good, he would have boxed me for 12 rounds.
Exactly,
and won on
mate.
points and put on a display just because he knocks me out early. So the Boks have shown, and France were far more physical than we were. They were far more physical at the breakdown, and we were second when it came to strength, power, and physicality in that game.
Yeah.
We can win without being the most dominant physical team.
Right.
And it was always a thing of South Africa, you stop their dominance, their physicality.
They've got no plan B.
They've got no
famous
plan B. So we have added balance to our attack, and we've added trust to that attack as well. So that's the one thing. Going back to the Northern Hemisphere, they've got 1 World Cup title to show. Australia has 2, South Africa 3, and New Zealand 3. And the one they had to show...
What did they do in that?
They did it.
It was a 10-man team.
They scrummed, line up more,
Brilliant
and
team.
Johnny Wilkerson kicked a drop ball off the wrong foot in the 100th minute to win it against an Australian team that tried to play some footy.
Mate.
So the recipe has always been there.
Yeah.
And I think if Ireland look again at that quarterfinal against New Zealand, there was just no variation to their play. That 37 phases that they took it, and we've watched that time and again this week because it plays all the time on the television. There was 3 times that the Irish took the ball direct and they actually made some yards. Otherwise, they were playing between the 10-meter line and the 22, going side to side, side to side.
The All Blacks weren't even coming up.
And they weren't attacking the next phase with any aggression.
Yeah.
They were waiting for New Zealand to infringe or to get the penalty.
Correct.
Kick to the corner and back their line-out drive. So when Ireland analyzes that and we take all the emotion away now, they will start seeing like, hey, this is going to haunt us, because we could have played it differently in that time. But because for 2 years they didn't have to play it differently. They were beating most teams playing in a very structured way that looked appealing because of their phase play. Yet teams that strike very quickly, and South Africa and New Zealand are 2 teams that strike very quickly. Within 3 phases they score.
Correct.
We don't build. Invariably, we don't build 20, 30 phases to score a try. We don't, certainly.
Yeah.
And why do we have to?
Exactly. Well, and that's the key to our defense, right? We keep talking about it. We don't try and kick down the front door and build phases to break down a defense to force a try. We say, you guys carry the ball. You carry the onus for looking after it. And when our defense double teams you and you spill it, we're just going to give it to Ches. He's going to go 65 meters for a try.
But I still don't think enough respect's been given to the 32-12 demolition of England in the 2019 World Cup final in Japan. We really played a fantastic game that day. The scrum was so dominant and strong. They won scrum penalties, the line-out function. And we started that game, shame we were going to play with width, and then we had the backs to do it. And we cut England up more. England never looked like they were going to score a try. Owen Farrell's boot kept them in the game up until a point, and the last 20 minutes there was only one team in it. And if you look at that game again, removed all the emotion now, the nerves have settled. France, South Africa. Realistically, in that last 6-7 minutes, the momentum had turned in South Africa's way. We played in the right areas of the field, and they were the ones panicking and basically trying to score that try from the other end of the earth.
Spot on.
Even Dupont in those last few minutes, it's the edgiest I've seen him. He was fatigued from the pace of the game. So I just think, sure, it's great to read the world saying, respect, these boys can play. But to South Africans, I want to say we never really had to read it from them or know it from them. We didn't need JK's endorsement that the Africans can play. We don't need Clive Weaver to say they're a good side. We know we're a good side, but there's going to be times where we don't have to score 4 tries, and there's going to be times where we don't have to kind of play high-risk rugby to show the world we can actually play. We've always had the skill set, and the great Springbok teams have always been able to score tries, going back to the amateur days, and score tries against anyone and do them beautifully. It's just, as Eddie Jones always famously said to the Springboks, when they said, we want to play like the Brumbies, and he said, if we had your pack and Farida Priya, you wouldn't even know who played 10 for the Brumbies.
Bingo.
And the world has tried to take us away from playing to our strengths.
Of course they have, yeah.
And what I do love about what Jacques and Rassie have done is they've maintained that core of the forwards' strength in our set piece, but added to that and said we can't just rely on that. We need to play with a bit more variation. We need to find players who can play a completely different style to a more conservative back division who's just going to rely on forward dominance. If you look, Zels, because you're nodding away there, mate, if you look, I don't know if you're falling asleep or if I'm giving you sermons from this side.
No, mate.
If you look at all the talk leading up to this test match, there's not much different that England can do in their match 23 than what we've seen.
No.
Do they pick Marcus Smith or Freddie Stewart at fullback? Like that's debatable. I don't think Marcus Smith is going to do anything against us. So, and Stewart is very good under the high ball. What variations would you make to the Springboks, of any, from that 23 that played? Do they tamper with that 23? Do they adjust it? And because, look, you got to win this one to get to the next week.
Correct.
And people are saying, like, I remember the All Blacks 2007 resting players for that quarterfinal to make sure they're ready for the semi-final that they never got to.
100%. So for me, it's a very difficult one, but the 2 key things that I would look at in this one is, for me, Bongi and Bonami is absolutely vital to us winning this tournament. And, yes, we do have to get to the final, but if it costs us Bongi and we have to play the All Blacks without him, I would be very nervous about that. So, for me, a major consideration is, do you start Deon Free against England and have Bongi on the bench as an insurance policy, number 1? And then number 2, as I've said before, for me, Lukhanyo is the best outside centre in the world. I think he adds massive value. Take nothing away from Jesse. He had an absolutely outstanding game, arguably his best game. But and we don't know what Lekanyo's situation is, but if Lekanyo's close to 100%, he's a guy I would love to see on the field when we play the All Blacks, assuming we get past England. And so you have to, I think, get that guy on the field before those 80 minutes. And so how do you do that? Is this a week that you look at doing it? In the past, Russie's been a guy who starts a player that's coming back from injury so that he can take him off if needed. Do you make that massive call to move Lekanyo in at 13 this week? Do you not even feature him? Do you just say we're going to go with JC the whole way? So those are the two primary selection things that I would look at this week.
So if you look at the backs, the only two backs who could threaten to come into the mix would be Kane and Moody and Lekanyo. And Ratsi's already made noises. This could be where he starts Kanan. Then where would he start him? You know, does he start him at 13? Does he start him at
on the wing?
At the wing. I mean, their biggest dilemma must be: do you take the high of this team and kind of disrupt it?
Correct.
And so the only kind of variation for me would be: do you go 5-3 or 6-2? And I personally would go 6-2 against England. Either bring in an extra loose forward like Jasper, or bring in the extra lock like Jean Klein, and I would drop Willie Leroux out of the mix and go with two backs. A scrum off, and then which do you bring a Moody onto the bench or Lekanyo onto the bench for that?
Yes.
That's kind of
you
like...
don't think you'll start Jasper this week?
Or then do you say it's not possible because we're going to continue to go with Marnie and Pollard? So and that takes it out, and we don't back a non-specialist scrum off. So it's going to be a 9 and a 10 specialist, and that's it. And or we're going to go 5-3 again, but the difference is we're going to bring Lekanyo onto the bench, not Willie Leroux, because we got cover at fullback through Kurt Lee, through Cheslin,
plenty of guys
even
there.
through Marnie Lebok.
Yeah.
If
in an emergency,
if Lekanyo has to come on and get 40 minutes under his belt. So that to me would be where the discussion starts, and potentially is this the game that Ox starts at loosehead and Kitsy comes off the bench?
Yes.
Because Kitsy did look a bit fatigued against the French, but then was at the pace of the game in the first 40 minutes that our tight five just wasn't used to, because they ran us around everywhere without giving us the tight five kind of calm of a scrum, of a line out. Our guys were chasing shadows for the best part of 30 minutes, and we saw that in Australia a few years ago, and it was our undoing. Our game plan is not suited for our pack, that starting pack.
To be going east-west.
To go north, south, east, west, and be chasing.
Yeah.
They get fatigued. Their set piece is then not a factor, and subs are made on 43, 44, 45 minutes, as they were in Paris.
Yeah. So, I mean, the makeup of the bench will obviously be vital. I've got a sneaky suspicion that a Jasper Wiese starts this kind of match. I think Ox starting at loosehead would be a great call with Kitshoff coming off the bench. I suppose you've got to make a call on Earman, such a massively important piece in the Bok pack, but also a guy who you need on the field, I suppose, in a World Cup semi-final. I mean, that's what it is. So,
and it's again, I see probably 21 of the 23 players involved.
Yeah, exactly.
From last week, it's the makeup could change.
Yeah, exactly.
Because what you don't want to do is give England a sniff. And all of a sudden they start believing.
Yeah.
And nothing is worse than a team that shouldn't be in a semi-final believing they can win the tournament.
Yeah.
It's like a number 11 batsman in cricket who edges the first four for 4 and he's on 69 days, believes he can bat. And then you just don't find that edge. You just don't get him out.
Yeah.
And that ball then goes anywhere except into someone's hands. So, I mean, Ratsi's already named the team. The players know what it is. He knew what semi-final team he was going to pick.
Agreed.
Weeks ago, him and Jacques. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they've got that under control. We're talking about permutations, opinions. We all have them.
Yeah.
That's why so many of you comment, and your comments are great. Your comments are insightful. We learn from you potentially as much as you learn from us in terms of the game, and we all see the game differently. If you watch a game from the halfway line, if you're behind the post or on television, you see a different game. Mathematically, you see a different game.
Speaking of a different game,
we're going to get to there now, but we're going to talk in great detail about the Boks and the team selection on Friday morning. So there will be one more show before before the Saturday night semi-final, and Moneyman will be giving his predictions on Friday as well. So kind of watch out for that. Zels will be chatting to him. What are the odds? And it's not just what are the odds on a victory. There's so many variations that you can kind of be getting some kashish from when it comes to these two semi-finals. The Boks, respect the world has for them. They're the most liked team there. They were the most liked team in 2007 as well. When the host went out, everyone was Afrique du Sud, Springbok. I loved it. I was there for those 7 weeks, the best 7 weeks of my rugby riding career. They are the most popular team there again. outside of the hosts who have now gone. They're the team people will want to see win the World Cup. The French will adopt them. Sia's going to Racing next year. He'll become an adopted Frenchman. Cheslin played there for how many years? Dion Ferry played there. The French will draw on that these guys are actually theirs. So we keep our focus right. We kind of keep our feet on the ground, and we listen to what Eddie Jones said to Jake in 2007 when the Boks beat England 36-0 in the pool stages, and the English media was saying, but can you do that again in a final? Can you score 4 tries in a final? And he told Jake, calm down. We only need 1 more point, mate.
Yeah.
And a final's different. That final was 15-6. No tries. Did anyone care?
No.
We certainly didn't. And we were always dominant. And that's got to be the approach. Guys, we need 1 more point in a semi-final. If we get there, 1 more point in a final, and we world champions back-to-back, 4th time ever. So rugby sense has to prevail now. This isn't about box office entertainment value. It's not about Netflix. It's not about what Hollywood wants.
Agreed.
Ricky, give me the raw. You know
No
what's
raw
coming.
today. Let's talk about Argentina. Let's
That's
talk
why
about
I
New
want the raw. It's your
Zealand.
cousins, man.
My cousins. I love these guys with the horizontal stripes. They play in the All Blacks. Everybody's written them off. You guys could never beat New Zealand, the greatest team in the world. But never count us out.
We won't count you out, mate. 25-15, 2020 in Australia. The All Blacks were at odds. Historic first ever win. The comeback from that was they got pumped the next week. They got pumped again. There was 40-point defeats. There was 50-point defeats. Then the All Blacks came to South Africa. Ian Foster was gone. They had lost at Nelspruit. They went to Alcatraz, Ellis Park, given no price to win. Our Boks were going to bury them and basically bury the All Blacks for the next couple of years till Scott Robertson arrived. We felt sorry for them. We showed them great camaraderie. Maybe that was part of the master plan as well, to keep Fozzie there. Well done, Russie. They scored a heroic win. Absolute magnificent ticker that they showed. They played for the jersey. They played for the badge. They played for a nation. And they got that win in front of 62,000 nutters at Ellis Park. Very similar to what they did in Paris against Ireland. And then the next week they went to Christchurch, the home of New Zealand rugby, and they lost to Argentina for the first time ever at home. That will be in the back of their minds, thinking about, we just did Ireland in a way that people said we couldn't. How do we regroup for an Argentinian side that's been erratic at best at this World Cup? Because is the scenario going to play out again? Do you think there's any chance of that scenario playing out?
Mate, I always think there's a chance of an anomaly. I mean, the quarterfinals, proves the point that anybody can win on the day at a World Cup in a knockout match. I don't think Argentina are going to beat New Zealand, but I do think that Argentina present New Zealand with a much tougher challenge than England presents to South Africa. And both teams are coming off games where they made lots of tackles and there was a lot of emotion. And where the Boks have got a lot of depth in most positions, the All Blacks are not in this. They don't have the same luxury. And so they're going to have to pick themselves up. I mean, they basically defied their critics last week. Everybody wrote them off. They were the team that was, Ireland's going to smash you guys. You're going home now. Now the tables have turned radically for them. They are the favourites. People are tipping the All Blacks to win the World Cup now. And so Argentina comes in as rank underdogs. They've been written off since they lost to England. And they are a team that has proven in the past, even though it doesn't happen often, in the last 3 seasons, they've beaten them, twice. So
they've beaten them twice out of 7, and there's an interesting statistic. The first interesting fact, the first time they won 25-15, and they bullied the All Blacks, Angus Gardner was the referee. And everyone's like, well, that Australian, he doesn't really like New Zealand, okay, because he's an Aussie. But the last time they played was in Mendoza earlier this year, 41-12. To the All Blacks. Angus Gardner was the referee as well. So let's kind of take that out of the equation. I think if the All Blacks play well, they win comfortably. If Argentina play well, they run them close by less than a score.
Yeah.
But I do think there's enough from that All Black performance, and confidence is a massive thing when it comes into playoffs.
Yes.
There's enough from that All Black performance to also know they only need 1 more point to get to the final. So I am tipping New Zealand to win this one by 12 points.
Sure.
But it'll be tough for them. I don't think they'll be able to match that emotional intensity that they had against Ireland. But I think they're a good enough side to beat Argentina and to go through to the final. What I find very bizarre is people tipping them to win the final based on beating Ireland.
Exactly.
Yet not tipping South Africa to win the final, but beating New Zealand based on beating the hosts, but also beating England 35-7 the last time they played, using a 7-1 bench
Zealand, yeah.
and really showing up a vulnerability in that New Zealand pack strength when it comes to depth.
Spot on.
So I've got the All Blacks to win 32-20, 28-16, somewhere around there. But I think there'll be a 12-point differential. But it's going to be tough. They're going to have to work to get that win. And I don't expect the performance to be anywhere as neat, anywhere as disciplined as it was against Ireland.
Yeah, I think that is a good call. I like the result. I also think that New Zealand will win. I'm going to give them a 9-point victory. And I'm going to say it's a slightly lower scoring game. I'm thinking more along the 27-18 range.
All right, guys, keep your comments coming. Thanks for all the positivity. We will chat Friday morning about the Springboks, and it will be exclusively about the Springboks when we look at the team makeup and we look at the match and how we think they will play and what we think the result will be against England.